Breaking, U.S. launches night strike at Venezuela's heart as tensions explode.
At 4:12 a.m. local time, the calm over the Caribbean ended without warning. A B-1B Lancer was already racing south at nearly 600 miles per hour, flying above 40,000 feet, its course fixed and final. This was not a drill. This was not a signal flight. This bomber was moving straight towards Ciudad Guayana, the city that powers and feeds much of the country. Inside the aircraft, everything was quiet and controlled. Systems were armed. Targets were locked. There was no debate left. Below, Venezuelan radar stayed active. Air defense crews did not shut down. Instead of stepping back, they held their ground, and that decision pushed the situation past the point of pause. Far offshore, United States Navy crews were already moving. Orders came in fast. Timelines collapsed from hours to minutes. On glowing screens, distances shrank. What had been tension on paper was now real movement in the air. This was not a mistake and not confusion in the dark. It was a deliberate move into danger. Venezuela believed it was showing resolve, but it did not see how long this moment had been prepared, or how many eyes were already locked on every step. If you want to follow how this unfolds minute by minute, subscribe now and tell me in the comments if this line should ever have been crossed. Ciudad Guayana was not chosen by chance. This city is not just another industrial zone on a map. It is the center of gravity for Venezuela's economy and its ability to function as a modern state. Power plants, aluminum factories, fuel storage sites, and river crossings are all concentrated in one place. When one system fails here, others fall with it. That is why military planners call it a single point of failure. From a tactical view, the location matters even more. Ciudad Guayana sits deep inland, far from the coast, protected by distance and air defenses. Hitting it means proving that distance no longer protects critical infrastructure. It sends a clear signal that no site is out of reach, no matter how far it sits from the shoreline or how important it is to daily life. But this is not just about maps and strategy boards. For the people working night shifts inside those plants, this was not a symbol or a message. It was their job, their paycheck, their routine. Engineers monitoring turbines, guards walking quiet corridors, operators watching control panels that suddenly became targets. In those moments, this was not politics, it was personal. For crews involved on both sides, the pressure was just as real. For Venezuelan air defense teams, shutting down systems meant giving ground. Keeping them active meant risking everything. For United States crews, every decision carried weight far beyond the cockpit or command room. Once the chain started moving, there was no easy stop button. This is where the confrontation sharpened. One side saw deterrence, the other saw survival. Both believed backing down would signal weakness. And if you're watching this and trying to decide who pushed too far first, press 1 if you think Venezuela miscalculated, or 9 if you believe the United States crossed the line, and subscribe so you don't miss what happened next. The first warning did not come as an explosion, it came as confusion. At a Venezuelan air defense site outside Ciudad Guayana, radar operators watched their screens flicker without explanation. A clean air picture broke into noise. One contact became 3. Altitude numbers jumped, then froze. At first, it looked like a system fault. Crews restarted software, antennas were checked. Then the range numbers began dropping too fast to ignore. Someone in the room said it quietly, "That's not weather." Within seconds, the noise spread across multiple consoles. Signals overlapped. Identification tags vanished. What the operators were seeing no longer matched what they had trained for. This was not a single aircraft pushing the edge of airspace. This was something wider, heavier, and already in motion. Hundreds of miles offshore, the view was completely different. Inside a United States Navy command center, the screens were calm and sharp. Tracks were steady. Timers were already counting down. When the launch order arrived, it did not come with urgency. It came like a confirmation of something long decided. A hand moved to a switch. 2 seconds later, the first Tomahawk missile left its launch tube. Then another, then another. Each missile dropped low over the ocean, hugging the surface, turning south toward land. On the screens, their paths were clean lines, smooth and controlled. Back on land, Venezuelan crews tried to react. Radar vehicles began to reposition. Orders were shouted to restore tracking. Missile teams brought systems online, but the air was now filled with signals they could not separate. Some screens went dark completely. Others showed targets that disappeared as soon as they appeared. Communication inside the network started to strain. Phones rang without answers. Data links stalled. Crews trained to act in clear steps were forced into guesswork. Every second felt late. Every pause felt dangerous. One operator later described it as trying to grab shadows that kept moving. This was the first real exchange of the confrontation. No impacts yet, but the line had been crossed. If you're watching this unfold and choosing a side, press 1 if you think Venezuela should have powered down to avoid escalation, or 9 if you believe holding the line was the only choice. And subscribe now, because what came next moved even faster. Once the first missiles were airborne, there was no pause. The operation moved from preparation to execution in a matter of seconds. Over the Caribbean, the Tomahawks settled into their cruise profile, flying barely a few hundred feet above the water. At that height, radar coverage thins. Curvature hides objects. Every mile they traveled reduced reaction time on land. From the coast inward, the missiles split into programmed routes, each one aimed at a different piece of the same system. Above it all, the electronic pressure increased. EA-18G Growlers pushed steady waves of interference into the airspace. To Venezuelan crews, the spectrum became crowded and unstable. Frequencies bled into each other, warnings overlapped. It became harder to tell what was real and what was noise. Then came the next layer. From the west, high and fast, F-22 Raptors crossed the border. They did not announce themselves. They did not stay long. Their job was simple and brutal. Any radar that tried to push through the interference became a target. One emitter came back online for less than 10 seconds. That was enough. A missile was already on the way. Inside Venezuelan command posts, decisions stacked up faster than they could be processed. Shut systems down and lose awareness, or keep them on and risk destruction. Vehicles began to move, but roads were narrow and timing was unforgiving. A radar that paused too long became a fixed point. A fixed point became a strike. In close combat, seconds matter more than firepower. A delay of 5 seconds can decide whether a system survives or vanishes. Crews felt that pressure as alarms echoed and instructions overlapped. Some teams followed procedure. Others acted on instinct. None of it slowed the pace. Out at sea, United States crews watched the sequence unfold exactly as planned. No cheering, no celebration, just confirmation after confirmation. Each phase cleared space for the next. Air defenses thinned. Gaps widened. The path ahead became cleaner. There was a brief moment of quiet between waves. No explosions yet, just engines, static, and the sound of breathing inside headsets. Everyone involved understood what that silence meant. The escalation phase was complete. What followed would not be reversible. What Venezuelan commanders believed they were seeing was only part of the picture. As radar teams struggled to rebuild their air picture, a new pattern appeared. Several contacts seemed to drift away from Ciudad Guayana, pulling attention west and south. To tired crews under pressure, it looked like a shift, a possible feint. Maybe the main threat was changing direction. It wasn't. Those signals were not aircraft and not missiles headed for impact. They were decoys, reflections shaped by electronic warfare to drag radar eyes in the wrong direction. While crews focused on the new tracks, the real strike paths stayed low and quiet, already past the point where warnings mattered. This was the twist that changed everything. Venezuelan defenses were not being overwhelmed by numbers alone. They were being redirected. Systems that could have engaged earlier were now looking elsewhere. Vehicles moved to cover the wrong sector. Orders went out that arrived seconds too late. Inside command rooms, confusion turned into doubt. Was this still the main attack, or had it already passed? By the time that question was asked, the answer no longer mattered. The window to stop what was coming had already closed. For United States planners, this moment confirmed the design of the operation. The decoy phase was never meant to destroy anything. It was meant to steal attention. In modern combat, attention is a resource, and once it is misused, it cannot be recovered in time. Crews on both sides did not know it yet, but the confrontation had already tilted. The air defenses were still active, missiles were still loaded, and orders were still being shouted. But the balance had shifted quietly, without an explosion, without a visible warning. The strike was now committed. The only question left was where the first impacts would land, and how much of the system would still be standing when the noise finally arrived. The first impact came without warning. At ground level near Ciudad Guayana, there was no siren, no countdown, just a sudden flash that turned night into white light. Seconds later, the sound arrived. A deep udar that rolled through steel and concrete, followed by another, then another, each one closer than the last. One tomahawk struck a power substation on the edge of the industrial zone. Transformers erupted. Flames climbed fast. Within moments, control systems across the region began to fail. Lights went out in waves, not just in the city, but far beyond it. Elevators stopped. Traffic signals died. Hospitals switched to backup power as alarms filled their halls. Then the next targets were hit. A missile slammed into an aluminum processing facility, punching through the roof before detonating inside. The blast tore machinery from its mounts. Another hit fuel storage nearby, sending a column of black smoke rising thousands of feet into the air. The fire spread faster than crews could respond. Across the river, a bridge took a direct hit. Steel buckled. A section collapsed into the dark water below, cutting a major route in seconds. What had taken decades to build was gone in a moment. Inside Venezuelan command rooms, the reports came in too fast to track. Power loss, structural damage, fires out of control. Communications dropped as the grid failed. Orders were still being given, but fewer units were answering back. High above, the United States aircraft never slowed. There was no need to watch the results. Sensors already confirmed what mattered. Targets were neutralized. Systems were down. The mission timeline stayed intact. For the crews on the ground, this was no longer a military exercise or a political message. It was survival. For planners far away, it was the moment the operation proved its point. One coordinated strike had cracked the core of the system. And if you're watching this and deciding where you stand as this moment unfolds, press 1 if you believe Venezuela pushed too far and triggered this outcome, or press 9 if you think the United States response went too far. And subscribe now because the consequences of this strike were only beginning. By sunrise, the sky was quiet, but the damage was everywhere. Large parts of the country were without power. Cities woke up in darkness. Phones stopped charging. Water pumps shut down. Traffic lights failed, turning morning streets into confusion. Hospitals switched to emergency generators. Doctors worked under backup lights, watching fuel levels drop hour by hour. Some surgeries were delayed, others were canceled. Patients who depended on machines suddenly depended on diesel. In Ciudad Guayana, fires kept burning inside the industrial zone. Smoke drifted into nearby neighborhoods, forcing families to leave with little warning. Fire crews struggled as damaged roads and low water pressure slowed their response. Key bridges were down. Routes that once moved food, fuel, and medical supplies were cut in minutes. Factories stood silent, machines frozen mid-shift. Thousands of workers realized the damage was not temporary. Jobs built over decades were gone overnight. From a military view, the message was blunt. No ground invasion was needed. No tanks rolled through streets. Yet power, transport, industry, and daily life were disrupted at the same time. This was modern warfare aimed at systems, not soldiers. As dawn spread across the coastline, officials rushed to explain what had happened, but answers came slowly. Emergency broadcasts repeated the same message: remain calm, conserve fuel, wait for instructions. In reality, control was already slipping. With communications unstable, local leaders made decisions on their own, often with incomplete information. Rumors moved faster than facts. For many civilians, the shock was psychological as much as physical. A modern nation had stalled in a single night. Confidence in safety, stability, and routine was shaken. For observers abroad, the signal was just as strong. This was a demonstration of reach and timing, not destruction for its own sake. The lesson was hard to ignore. In today's conflicts, you don't have to occupy a city to break it. You only have to interrupt what keeps it running. And as some lights slowly returned while others stayed dark, one thing was clear: this was not the end. It showed how fast the next move could come and how little warning it might give.